What's up, everybody, and welcome to the channel. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the one, the only, Ironsworn, which needs no introduction, I feel like. This is the solo RPG world's little darling. And yeah, it was the first solo RPG I played. However, I played it after discovering solo RPGs, and then a matter of days later I was sitting down with this and playing with it, and at the time I still didn't really know. The big thing that I was doing wrong is that I was trying to have the plot already planned out and be working my way towards and within that, and always trying to have a framework for why everything was happening in this grander scheme and how it would all lead to this or that. Anyway, I was doing too much of the over plotting before the fact sort of situation, and then trying to wedge everything that happened into this. And I probably just wasn't skilled at all at that point as far as improvising and seeing ways that things can fit together, even when at first they might not seem like it. I didn't really know how to use oracles, as far as inspiration and sparks. And so it was, I wouldn't say it was a bad experience, and I wouldn't say I bounced off it. I think the system really, really intrigued me. I love the idea of the progress tracks that they use, and the vows, and the difficulty adjusting how fast the tracks fill up. I use that in some of my solo play, even when I'm not using Ironsworn. I like that concept a lot. But yeah, it didn't satisfy me at the time. And so I figured, now that I've had some experience, I have learned how to do this hobby and in a way that is good for me, that I figured it's time now to revisit old Ironsworn and see if we can have some fun. The other thing too is I really like the world that I created at that time. So this is going to be a session 0, but we're not going to be creating a world. I already have the world created, so we can skip over that part. I'll just kind of summarize it for you. And then we're going to get into some character creation and sort of setting up where we are in the world and what's going on before we move on into session 1. But yes, all right, so here is our world. So for the old world, I picked the standard option where there was a sickness that moved around the world, killing a bunch of people. Everybody tried fleeing, find safe places, and only the few that survived made it to the Ironlands. The Iron is I made my own here, a bleak and desolate land littered with ruins of the ancients. So there was this ancient civilization that lived on the Ironlands, and they have these very strangely styled but all ruined remnants of their civilization that are crafted from an unknown material, and everyone that exists now does not know how to machine or manipulate this material. So there's all these crumbling ruins around, spotted about the landscape, and between these ruins is wilderness. The legacies, human-like beings used to live here, called the ancients. All right, so the ancients, they're all gone now except for their souls, which sort of haunt the Ironlands, and they are colloquially called the Revenants. And they are sort of and we'll get into it a little bit later, but they're sort of like this blue spectral aura in the shape of a person, and they wander almost aimlessly, and sometimes they'll stop and be there for a minute, be there for a week, be there for 2 years, be there for... There are some revenants that have existed in the same spot since anyone came to that land, since time immemorial, and they've never moved. So very unpredictable sort of entities, the revenants, and they are presumed to be the souls of the ancients, although very little is known about them. And the reason we know that they're related to the ancients we'll get into in a second. As far as the communities, there are a few communities, and they're kind of spread out all over. I did add a little additional note here, is that many of the ruins that sort of spot the landscape that are made of this unknown material that can't be machined, those ruins get repurposed into little ad hoc villages, mostly. Very rarely bigger than that, anywhere from camps to a village tops. And that's what most of the communities that exist in the Ironlands now are. But because of the sort of wandering revenants, if a revenant wanders into town, generally the people are going to move out, and we'll get into why in a second here. But so these really kind of life in the Ironlands is very nomadic, or potentially nomadic. Like you may set up a village on these ruins, sort of add some like roofing and add some furniture and turn this ruin into your little community. If a revenant never comes by, you may choose to just stay there and live out your life there, and the community may thrive. But at the same time, a revenant might roll in and you got to pack up whatever you can and leave and find another place. And the next day, another revenant might show up there and you just pack and leave. And so it's very unstable living situation in my Ironlands. It's sort of semi-nomadic. Then we have the leaders. I chose the standard leadership is varied. It just kind of depends on where you're at. Defenses, again, everything's too sort of unpredictable for any kind of big standing army fighting force to develop. Mysticism, so before coming to the Ironlands, the way the world was, is that magic was sort of like the stuff of fairy tales. Like it was very, from a game lore standpoint, this was like very low magic, very low magic. But ever since everybody came to the Ironlands and the Revenants became a feature of daily life, there is much more of a contact with, contact with sort of magical forces. And the way that manifests isn't just the Revenants, because what happens is if you make contact with a Revenant, if they just happen to pass through you, and that's one thing I should mention, they can pass through objects. These Revenant are literally just like an aura floating along, and they can go fast, they can go slow, and they can pass through walls and trees and furniture and people. But if a living thing, human or animal, and even plants, comes into contact with a Revenant, they have this chance of being sort of like imbued with this magical contact to another realm kind of situation. They call it being soul touched, and it comes from this sort of communion with the Revenants. But being soul touched can lead to what are called soul scars, and then soul scars can lead to what is called soul madness. And if you have way too much contact or communion with a Revenant, you eventually reach soul death. And soul death is, so there was soul madness, that's like you're mad and crazy and raving. Soul death is generally like you are there and you are technically alive, but you kind of just stare off into space. You're basically kind of like comatose. And so it depends on the individual how severely being in communion with a Revenant will affect them. Some people will go soul mad instantly. Some people can get soul scars multiple times and never reach a state of soul madness. So it just kind of depends on the individual, but in general, it's not good. However, leading us right into our next one, so there's old and new gods in the harsh land, and prayer is a simple but powerful comfort. But I also added that the Revenant and the soul touched came many disparate cults and sects that seek out communion with Revenants. And so they're just like these. They can be big or small groups of people. They can be organized or just disparate. But there are people who seek out Revenants to become soul touched, to get, it's kind of like a drug, right? They get addicted to it and they need more of it, and it just degrades them over time, and eventually they go mad. And for this world, there are some sects who see that as reaching a sort of nirvana or an elevated state, and so it's a very culty religious experience around these Revenants. The firstborn, so the ancients' legacy is everywhere. These are the people that were here before. And again, their inscrutable ruins, the artifacts that are around, and the ever-present Revenants. So no one really knows what happened to these ancients, or why their souls seem to remain, or what their souls desire. The Revenants are just as inscrutable as the ruins. They just are kind of like a feature that's there, and we don't know how to do anything with them except commune, if that's what your predilections are. But yeah, very mysterious. We don't know what happened to them. All we see is what's left behind in their ruins and their Revenants. The beasts, so the soul madness, I mentioned earlier, it doesn't just affect humans. When a Revenant comes in contact with plants and animals, it can affect them in sometimes even more severe ways. So it can cause them to become violent, and it can even cause monstrous mutations. So if a Revenant comes like floating by and touches like a lotus flower or something, or a cactus, it might mutate and warp and become a sort of a hostile plant creature. Likewise, if it goes through a stag, it might turn that stag into a like 1.5 headed with extra horns on its back and a leg sticking out of its butt. Like, I don't know, that image is weird. But anyway, you know what I mean. They can just end up being very mutated and weird and abominated. So that is that. And then the horrors is, of course, the revenants and the soul madness that come along with them, whether that's humans or animals or plants. They are the horror that lurks and mindlessly floats around in the Ironlands. So that is the world in which our tale will take place. Character creation summary. All right, envision your character. I'm envisioning. Actually, I do have an idea for a character. So I have this painting that I did years ago, I think like 2019 or so. And it's of this halfling woman. And she's kind of like dressed like a rogue. She's got this pauldron. I'll put the image on screen. That way you can see what I'm talking about. So you can check out what I've got on the screen now. But yeah, she's this halfling character, and I did this illustration of her back in 2019. And I always really liked this character. I always wanted to know more about this character's backstory and what her deal was. So maybe we'll go ahead and use that as our character inspiration. I'm trying to remember if there are different races in this. So I guess we'll see. We may end up making her a human that's just a small person, right? And but anyway, we've envisioned our character. She's this sort of small woman. A name on page 33. Let's go ahead and get a name for her. One last time. 15. We got Abella. I like that. Or Kara. Abella. Let's do Abella. All right, so we've got our character, Abella. No last name. All right, and then next up, we got to do some stats. So we've got to figure out. So it's 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. Okay. I feel like this is a character. Again, she's illustrated as like a rogue. So I feel like edge or shadow. Let's do edge. I'm gonna go edge over shadow. And I want wits to be the 2. And heart to be 2. And then iron and shadow will be 1. All right, let's see how it goes. All right, and then health starts at +5. And then spirit is at +5. Supply starts at +5. That might change here because I got an idea for where I want this character to start. So our reset momentum is +2. So we start at +2. And our max is 10. Okay. All right. Our vows. You should start your first session with 2 vows, a long-term goal, your background vow, and an immediate situation which must be dealt with, your inciting incident. You'll find quest starters on chapter 4. All right, to learn a little bit more about Abella so that we can establish some bonds and some vows, I want to roll on some oracles here. Let's start with a theme. So we got 19. That's going to be death. The theme is death, okay? And let's just get an action real quick. I don't know if we'll use it, but with 37, I just want to see if it inspires us a little bit. Hunt. Okay. Yeah, okay. My thought is that we are out on a hunt. So we live somewhere in the Ironlands, and we can roll up a location. But we live somewhere out in the Ironlands in one of the ruins that's been repurposed into our little community. And it's just a small community. There's just a couple families, right? A few families maybe. So we come back from the hunt to find that everybody that was left back at our community is dead. And I'm kind of curious, as far as the way in which they died, I want to look at one of these cards for a little inspiration-y. Inspiration-y? Oh my god. Inspiration. And if we look at this, I'm going to look at maybe some of the sensory information. Something open that should not be is what we see. Something open that should not be. We feel a gut-wrenching acceleration. We smell the gore of a slaughterhouse, right? Well, that makes sense. That means that these bodies are mutilated, right? So we come back And the women, the children, the men, the elders, their bodies are all strewn about and torn open, and we hear a cacophony of animal calls. Okay, so it's us, and are we alone? I'm going to say bad odds. Are we alone? Yes, we are alone. Okay, so we went out to hunt on our own, and we are literally alone now, and everyone we ever knew is dead. And so we're going to have to get a little creative as far as bonds. I think it's important for us to have at least one. And maybe there is an old sibling or an old so-and-so that was part of our village but had decided to set off into the world for whatever reason. They had decided to leave, right? Maybe to seek adventure. But let's go ahead and establish that we have one bond with someone who is, we don't know where at this point. Let's get a name for them. Oh, yeah, let's roll up a little bit on this bond. Character roll 57. So they were a guard. Okay, so maybe they went off to some caravan came traveling through one day, and they got caught up in this idea of adventure, and you can follow us around and be a caravan guard. It's a life of thrill and excitement, and we really need people like you. So this individual went off to be a caravan guard. Let's get their relationship to us. I think there's a relationship one, right? No, but there's names. All right, let's just go with some names. 79 is going to be Bryn or Yorath. I think Bryn. I think I like Bryn. So I'm just going to go ahead and write down here Bryn. I'm going to spell it with one N. Bryn. So our bond is we've got Bryn, a friend who left years ago to be a caravan guard. Other than that, everyone we know has just been killed. Okay, so a few notes here for Ironsworn Session 0. We have one bond, and that is Bryn, who was our friend who left years ago to be a caravan guard. All of our friends, family, and acquaintances are dead, right? Because we turned from the hunt. The whole community has been slaughtered. Their bodies are mutilated, and all we hear is howling all around us. Animal calls and animal howling. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I wanted to establish some of this so that we could come up with some good vows. Let's go with extreme, and it's to find Bryn, which might seem like a shot in the dark. You know, Bryn went off to be a caravan guard with, you know, we have no idea what destination they would be heading for. They're going to constantly be going here, there, and everywhere else, right? But the fact that they are a caravan guard gives us something specific to ask of when we're traveling about trying to find them. So I think extreme is okay. I kind of want to save the epic stuff for something a little bit more grand after we've found Bryn, perhaps. And let's see, what next? Okay, we already did our inciting incident, so we'll want to swear. So we need to do our... It's weird. The order of things is different here than it is on the other page, but anyway. Let's go to our abilities. We don't have any of those to start with. Assets. All right, so here are the assets I chose. First, I chose a companion. I thought it was pretty important for this character to have a companion, for one, because this is a survival situation out in the wilderness. It's going to be very hard to tough it alone in this world. Plus, she was hunting, and I imagine hunting alone, she would have a hound companion with her. And the only other person she knows in this world is Bryn, who's God knows where. So the fact that she's got no bonds, I thought having a companion is almost essential. Skirmisher, I decided that she was going to be a wielder of spears, and it was between this or a sling, and I decided to go with the spear, so we'll see how that unfolds. And then Wild Blood, I think, makes the most sense. This is an individual who's lived in the wilderness and is a hunter in the wilderness and tracks creatures and you know, can fashion her own spears and such. So I thought Wild Blood would be the appropriate path. So she gathers all her equipment from the town as these animals are all howling. So she does manage to collect the supplies necessary for a journey. So she's got her backpack, all that normal stuff that we don't really need to write down. I'm wondering if she has some special extra item. I'm going to say good odds. Yes, exclamation mark. Okay, so she's got something special. Let's I'm gonna pull this and just sort of take a look at what it sort of inspires here. It says fancy gift. Wine, chocolates, or strangely hypnotic painting. Maybe we look at the symbol here. And I usually use my little cards to read the symbols, but let's use the full sheet today. Birch tree, birth. Berkano is the name of the symbol. Fertility, birth, growth, liberation, renewal, new beginnings, love, family, connections. Romantic or personal relationships are advanced, or second chances are given. Prisoners pardoned, or similar. Okay, so what this says to me is this sort of fancy gift, this special item, is something related to the family that has all just been killed. Some sort of heirloom, some sort of a reminder of where she came from. Maybe it's a necklace, maybe it's a talisman of some sort. A little more elaboration. We've got isolate, romance. Oh, okay. So here's what it is. It's Bryn's mother's wedding band. All right. So it's just something that she knows, like she comes back, everybody's slaughtered. Her goal in life has always been to go find Bryn again, but she's just kind of, she's an important feature of her community, and she can't just leave them. But now that they're all dead, and their bodies are all mutilated, and there's all this howling going on around her, she quickly runs to Bryn's family's hut and finds the mother's, most of what's left of the mother's body there. And her arms are missing, but she looks over in the corner and sees the hand and is able to pull off the ring, the wedding band, and sort of, I guess she just slips it into her satchel. I mean, it almost feels like the iron vow that would be sworn at this point would be to return the ring to Bryn, but then that makes our background vow and our iron vow roughly equivalent. So as a hunter, we've always had this desire to slay an elder beast, to prove our formidability as a hunter, right? And now that this situation is upon us, our current vow that we're going to swear on upon iron is to reunite with Bryn, since Bryn is now all that we have, and return Bryn's mother's wedding band to Bryn. And let's go ahead and roll. We roll plus heart. Our heart is 2. If you make this vow to a person in our community with whom you are bonded, add plus 1. Okay, so we get plus 3. And so we rolled a 6, and so this is going to be a strong hit because we get 6 plus 3, right? 9. That beats both of these. All right, so we've got a strong hit. You're emboldened, and it is clear what you must do next. Take plus 2 momentum. Okay, so we get plus 2 momentum. I forgot to put down the formidability. I'm going to say this time that it is epic, given that we don't know where Bryn is. A little bit of reworking things here as we come to the end of this episode, but I think this is a good place to stop. Next time, I think things are going to be escalating. Like we've found this ring. This is the initiation. Or we've found this ring, and we're ready to set out and try and find Bryn. But it is going to be a travel through the wilderness just to find the next place that's civilized. But Bryn, or Abella rather, does know the next closest sort of town for what it's worth. And that is going to be her goal, is to set out. But I feel like things are going to get a little bit more intense when she leaves this little hut, and the howling that is surrounding her proves to be a little bit more trouble. All right, so that ends session 0. What an exciting session 0 it was. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this unfolds in this world. Again, like I said, I just really like the weird lore I came up with back when I first started solo role-playing with these revenants and this ancient civilization that used to live here, and I look forward to seeing how this unfolds. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this session 0 of Ironsworn, and definitely stay tuned for the next episode. In the meantime, let me know what you thought in the comments, like, subscribe, and I'll see you later.